Okay, sorry for the delay. There was a lot of things happening outside beyond my control, and also real life things. Don't worry about it. It's fine. So before we get started today, I just wanted to tell you guys that this is the beginning of whatever we're going to be doing from this point forward, and the streams will probably go down to once a week. So I'll try to figure out a day for those. The other thing that I want to share with all of you wonderfully beautiful people is that you can go to the Patreon right here. And so far, I think we have 14 patrons. Oh God, I should probably know these numbers, but you can go there and it'll help support me a little bit easier than the usual fare that's here on the YouTube, the YouTube, if you will. But we're not going to stay and talk about this for too long. I think I got most of the dad noises out of the way. So, uh, no, look, see, that's the problem, Spooky. See, DSP, he gets a lot of money from Patreon, but he doesn't do anything for those patrons. I guess I kind of don't either, in a weird way. But it's all the same. It's the same thing. Don't worry about it. So today we have a wonderful video that is not at any way supposed to be about what I put in the title. I guess kind of maybe. Will the streams be on time? Yes, they will. I can confirm that the streams will be on time. So this is the thing that we have to work with today. And as a lot of you may know from twitter.com, if you go onto the best website ever, you'll see this here. The thing about The Last of Us Part 2. And if you haven't played it, don't worry about it. I'm going to explain a little bit more about how they completely ruined a franchise, but it's because Naughty Dog crunched their employees to death. That's about as simple as it gets. The gameplay is very limited in this game, and it's meant to be a more cinematic experience. So that way people, when they play this game, they're, getting to view a movie first and not a game. But it's a weird thing. So if you guys have never played the game, don't worry. The first one is all you need to play, because the second one is god awful. Awful writing. It's like they tried too hard to see how people actually talk and exist. So take with that what you will. But today we have the best person in the entire world telling us that the series that came before this, Uncharted, is not a real video game. And that's okay. So let me go ahead and boot this up for you here on the good old computer. This is the video on YouTube as it is. And we could just do what we did the last time, where we talk about this a little bit more at length. So without further ado, here it is.
I don't normally do this, but out of concern for my safety, I'm going to start this off by saying that if you like Uncharted, I think that's totally cool and okay. I'm going to be pretty harsh on the series for the next 15 minutes, but there are...
Yeah, this is a 15-minute video, which means it's actually about like an hour-long video. So just take it in a little bit. Uncharted is a real video game, but Mother's Basement, a former game reviewer, yep.
There are a lot of good reasons for people to enjoy it if you do. I've been waffling about making an Uncharted 4 video ever since I spent 14 miserable, wonderful hours streaming it and going ever so slightly mad.
That's motherfucking Guybrush Threepwood. All of a sudden, this video game is great.
So you can see how not good at games he really is. That's kind of the problem here, and if he uses the gameplay that you're seeing in this video, it's not very good gameplay at all.
But the other day I saw a petition to remove a review of the game from Metacritic because it was tarnishing the game's score, and I had to step into the middle of it.
Of course, our savior, our Lord and Savior, Mother's Basement, Jeff Thew, had to step in to save Uncharted 4 from the thing. Apparently, Washington Post should be able to post the review. I think they should too, but you know what petitions do from change.org? Barely anything. So why did he try to make that a thing? Well,
we can argue till we're blue in the face about whether Metacritic is even worth looking at, but its purpose is pretty clear: to catalog the opinions of established critics. Taking an established critic off the site because the masses disagree with him would fundamentally undermine the only reason that the site even exists.
By the way, video games journalists, typically, if we were to go with the tried and true method of looking at games that they review, they're not very good at it. They are essentially just bad at their job. They don't play games, and if they can't talk about real life issues, then what they do is they get into the thing that they don't like, which would be video games. And nothing says heck gamers more than giving a game that is actually pretty good a very low score. I don't understand why Mother's Basement has to come to the defense of Washington Post when I think I remember this a little bit. I could be completely wrong, but they kind of didn't play the game, and that's why they wanted that removed. But of course, like I said, change.org petitions, they just don't work.
So that petition will go nowhere. But aside from that, the reason that Uncharted gets glowing reviews in the first place is that it's a super reviewer-friendly franchise.
No, it's a cinematic game. It's a cinematic game, Jeff Thu.
The average Uncharted game, everything after one basically, provides a passively entertaining thrill ride full of big, impressive moments that lets you feel like you've accomplished something without putting in much effort or skill.
I would be willing to say that Jeff Thu has not played Uncharted 2, the game arguably the biggest upgrade in the Uncharted franchise. It's the one that has a lot of gameplay, but it also has a good bit of just cinematics in the game itself. So, myself being a Uncharted aficionado, I can tell you that Uncharted 2 is by far one of the best Uncharted games. The first one, not so much. It had a lot of issues that people understandably understood. And then the second game said, okay, well, we're going to kick it into overdrive. And this is when they actually had good writing in it. It was a game that had a little bit of puzzles, and it was something that, you know, it was just challenging enough. The game itself is kind of tough, especially if you don't know where to go. They didn't really telegraph it. The third game was a huge leap forward for the graphics, at least on the PlayStation 3. Now, the fourth one, that was a lot of cinematics, but I didn't hate that game either. Now, that game was also a very long game. I didn't mind it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to say that it's not a real video game. I don't know where he gets that idea from. And also, let me read this here. Mad Beast Yeti with the Canadian $5 reduce. But Mother's Basement has an IQ of 189. How can we plebs like us even understand this 4D chess he's doing? You never understand what he does. You just kind of roll your eyes as hard as you can.
And for a game reviewer, that's fucking heavenly. With most games, when you boot them up, you have no idea when they'll actually be finished. It's not like reviewing a movie or TV show. How quickly a game is over depends on how much of it you want to see and how good you are at playing it.
Okay, but you also can just explore. But he's going to bring that up here in a second. He's going to bring up the fact that you could walk around in a game or explore different things, and it could take you, I don't know, maybe 100 hours. Whereas people that actually play the game, it may take them 25 hours or something along those lines. But you don't technically have to do much in the game.
GTA 5 might take one player 20 hours to complete and another close to 100.
Well, that's because there's side missions that you can do. What are you talking about, Jeff Thu? There's literally in GTA 5 there are side missions that you can do, and there's driving around the city in free roam. That's why it takes people forever, or they just never finish it. Why are we bringing up GTA 5 in this game? Why are we bringing up GTA 5 to contend with Uncharted?
The dirty little secret of game reviews is that most reviewers never actually finish anything that they're playing. Writing reviews for news outlets is a never-ending race to meet deadlines, particularly with hit-driving AAA titles, so a lot of reviewers end up playing 4 or 5 hours tops, typing up some flowery impressions, and tacking on a safe score based on what they played. If you see a reviewer who gives every game an 8 out of 10, that's what they're doing. I know because I did it sometimes too. By the way, don't go to this website. It's terrible now.
Yeah, it's terrible because he was on it. That's the reason why. So, as you can see, I don't want this to be taken out of context here. Mother's Basement, Jeff Thu, on November 20th, 2014, made a review for Far Cry 4 on the website Hardcore Gamer, which I don't even know if it exists or not, but, you know, this video itself is already kind of old anyways. But he knows that this is the case, but he still decides to call Uncharted not a real video game anything that really requires your input to be able to play it technically could be a video game. It's an interactive medium. Maybe he's saying it in like the weird metaphorical way that maybe like any YouTubers say, well, I love X, but I also hate X. That's essentially what this is I love Uncharted, but I also hate Uncharted. It's one of the laziest forms of writing that I can ever think of.
Now, but with Uncharted, you can be reasonably sure that you'll see the end of the game inside 2 or 3 play sessions no matter what. Outside of a few shooting gallery bits, you barely even have to think about what you're doing. It doesn't even require the attention of marathoning a TV show on Netflix because the story is over-padded tripe. And when you're done, you just talk about explosions and exhilaration for a bit, throw in a few references to the 1 or 2 directors you can name off the top of your head. Maybe talk about how games are outperforming movies as units of mass media consumption if you really want to pander, and collect your paycheck. Or don't, because most of these outlets don't even pay their writers.
Yeah, he would know all about not paying writers and things. Hint, hint. So, what we've gathered so far is that he's not good at the game, or maybe he is good at the game. He hasn't really told us, but the gameplay here doesn't really tell me that he is. You can see that he kind of like aims around and he doesn't really get, like, I don't know, on target a lot. But even then, oh well, you can sit down and play this game in about 2 or 3 playthroughs. I think that's mostly every game. If it's not every single game, you can sit down and play it, and then you'll finish it in about 2 or 3 playthroughs. Now, unless he means games like Cuphead, if you're just not good at it, then you're just not good. That's why accessibility is always a good thing. In Uncharted's case, it may not have the best accessibility. Like it's a, soon to be released Uncharted-like game, The Last of Us 2 here. The Last of Us 2 is a game that has many accessibility options. You can essentially be God at that game with virtually doing nothing the entire time. So it's just weird that he would bring up this point about how you can beat a game in 2 or 3 sessions. Yeah, you can, but you can also just not if you don't really want. It's really complicated, I guess. I don't know. Does he mean like you have to actually be good at the game? Some people may never see the end of the game because they just get busy. I have no fucking idea.
What you don't do is talk about gameplay in any kind of depth, because under scrutiny it all kind of falls apart.
I like that he used this clip, by the way. The gameplay part of Uncharted 2 is, I mean, it's very simple. This game's not a technical, like you have to be MLG Pro, and you definitely don't have to be MLG to play any of these games. So why does he bring this up?
Uncharted is famous for pretending to be a movie, and it's really good at that in all of the superficial ways that don't actually matter. The action moves at a good, well-directed clip, there's tons of witty back-and-forth banter, and everything feels cinematic. But the end goal for most filmmakers isn't just make a movie, it's tell a story. And in Uncharted's case, that's kind of an afterthought. Naughty Dog has been pretty open about the fact that they design set pieces first and then write a story around them, which is how Nathan Drake ended up being dragged from the middle of the desert to a pirate fortress before going back to the desert again.
Okay, so I know he's going to finish out his sentence here, but that's fucking stupid. The reason that you end up on the pirate ship is because you essentially get abducted. And then you end up back in the desert because you wash ashore. Now, if they wanted to go for the big explosions take of everything, sure, they could do that, but they have to write a story for the game that they're making. Now, if this is The Last of Us 2, then Neil Druckmann's writing it, then no, it doesn't get put together properly. And I think, to its credit, The Last of Us 2 can be a good game, but it fails to do good game things. It's so out of order that it's really hard to keep up. Now, in the case of Uncharted here, you can play the game and get a complete understanding of what's happening. Sure, you may not remember all of the events that happen in it. I mean, most games and movies are forgettable that way. But they added in gameplay so that way you would know where you're going to be at. The story is right there. Am I missing a thing? Like, Uncharted, just get through this.
5 minutes later. Some movies are written this way as well, Mission Impossible being the prototypical example, but it's a lot easier for these experiential, spectacle-driven narratives to justify themselves over the course of 2 hours as opposed to 15. Most Uncharted games struggle to find an actual point, and even the one that did ended up getting distracted from it for more than half of its running time. And if you don't have a good story to tell, all the cinematic feel in the world adds up to jack shit.
Okay, so Uncharted is way more of a game than Life is Strange. let's be very real here. Uncharted 4, or any Uncharted for that matter, is more of a game than Life is Strange. So the thing that separates games like Uncharted from Life is Strange series is that you actually play the game. Now, in Life is Strange, yeah, sure, you walk around and then you make decision-based things, but it doesn't have the same level of gameplay. And because something doesn't have the same level, doesn't mean that it's not a game. I don't know why he would bring this up. It's a thing where the game is meant to be a movie. That's what it's supposed to be. In fact, I got something that if you're an old boomer such as myself, I bet you probably remember these old school ads from the PlayStation 3 days. I had to like search this up. It's one of my favorite commercials. Remember the days of Uncharted 2?
Dear PlayStation, I've been playing Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, but my girlfriend won't stop watching because she thinks it's a movie.
This is pretty common, Jason. I mean, just look at this game.
You know, you got Nathan Drake's epic gunfights.
Impossible escape scenes and a plotline filled with betrayal. Give her an hour or so, she'll know it's a video game.
It's been 2 days.
Ready, honey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna file this under not an issue.
Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Rated T for teen. PS3, now $2.99.
Wow, that was a blast from the past. I hate looking at old things because now I just I feel like a person now. But yeah, it's definitely supposed to be a game. I don't know what his connection here is.
Look at Life is Strange. It also tries to emulate filmic techniques like rack focus, but it does so to enhance its visual storytelling capabilities. It evokes moods and sensations by subtly changing what the camera sees. Uncharted almost never moves beyond drawing your attention to an object, and it rarely even does that. Take any given shot from any of the games, and all you see is meaningless clutter. The dialogue also has a really painful air of artifice to it.
So I noticed that he's talking about how it's framing up things, but Uncharted games generally don't have that many cuts because it's meant to be more of a game than a movie. It's focusing on the characters, and then it focuses on these big, grand, wide openings of just vista. I don't know why he would compare the two. One takes place in a small town, this one takes place all over the world. Unless I'm missing a thing. Also, let me read the thing here. Zenith Works with the $5 super chat, sir. Thank you. Says, I hope you succeed at this full time. I hope I do too. And to be fair, it's going to be a little weird. And like I said in my video, the little short boy video, it feels very strange trying to go full time. I think that we're at some point going to run out of content to be able to stream, but I think that we'll come to that bridge when get to it.
Almost all Nathan Drake and his companions ever do in these games is spout action movie one-liners. Instead of developing their personalities and the emotional stakes of the story, Naughty Dog is more concerned with making them seem cool and funny.
I don't know if he ever understood any part of Uncharted, because one of the things about Uncharted 3 is that you and Sully are going on an adventure, and Sully's like, I'm just too old, I can't do this anymore. That's the entire point of pretty much the story. That's why you end up going through all of these different chains of events, is because Sully's old, you have to protect him, but you also don't want to tell anyone about your entire plan. Did he miss playing Uncharted 3? I think he probably just didn't. And Medbeast Jetty with another Canadian $5 review. Life is Tumblr. Yeah, life is pretty Tumblr sometimes. Just be like that, and you gotta go with it.
And the quips they say are often cool and funny, but they give zero reason to care about any of them. There are human moments in these scripts, but it seems like they're mostly inserted to fill a quota, or maybe the action movie quips were meant to fill a quota and someone misplaced a decimal. Either way, the writing in these games is sorely lacking in pathos.
So the reason that they have the funny and cool quips is because they are regular people. Nathan Drake's name, ND, is supposed to be a reference to Naughty Dog. So when Naughty Dog made this character, and obviously they wanted to make a new IP that was supposed to be like a movie, but it's a game that you play. The quips come in because they are supposed to be an action movie kind of quip thing. And people end up liking some of this stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone has to like it, but I think that he makes some pretty good one-liners. So when he's saying things about the dialogue, sure, the dialogue might not be great, but they definitely are effective. It's supposed to humanize these characters, so you know that Nathan Drake himself is supposed to be a very witty person. He's not supposed to be stupid, unless that's what Mother's Basement wants us to believe.
There are quiet moments in the beginning of each one where I feel invested, but by the end I'm always a bit too worn down by the posturing and the ridiculous supernatural bullshit to care.
So, because it has supernatural elements in it, apparently the game is just bad now. So, is the game bad or is the narrative bad? We haven't really established that.
Uncharted doesn't really emulate film. It emulates what people who don't watch a lot of movies think film is.
So what do we call this video then, Mother's Basement? Is this a video that emulates what it's like to actually watch a real review? Or is this made by people who think that they play games when they probably just watch this on YouTube?
And it kind of does exactly the same thing with games. The platforming is the most obvious example of this. It sure as hell looks exciting. Nathan Drake spends a lot of his time dangling precariously from the edges of cliffs and scaling sheer rock faces inches away from death, but it's all a facade. In terms of interaction, all you ever do is point in roughly the direction you're supposed to go and mash X to move along a series of magnetic handholds. Well, I mean, in 4 they add rope physics for a grappling hook to let you fuck around a bit in the space between the magnetic handholds.
Wait, did he ever play the Tomb Raider games, the newest Tomb Raider games? Because I feel like he's glossing over that. Maybe he'll bring it up. I've seen this video a couple of times, and honestly, I forget it every single time that I do see it. It's one of the most forgettable experiences. But in the Tomb Raider games, you do exactly the same thing. That's why people call it a discount Uncharted, and there's a reason that it doesn't nearly do as well as Uncharted games.
And a big magnetic wall that you can stick to by pressing square instead of X, but it's really the same bullshit with a different skin. At no point do you have to put any thought into the timing of your jumps or plotting your course. The game does all of that for you. You don't even have to judge distance, which is good because Drake's ability to jump is governed entirely by what the developers want to happen at any given moment.
See, now there's a problem that I have with this in particular. And it's where he said that it's pretty much governed by the game. Like, when you jump, it tells you how far you can actually make the jump, or, how it's stylized. If a game were to be realistic in this case, and you were to jump from ledge to ledge as Nathan Drake, and let's say that you don't nail it perfectly, and then you die, that's not a good game. Like, you could make the argument that in the higher difficulties, they kind of reduce the window in which you can actually jump to those things. So let me put it here on the screen. So right where these ledges are that are highlighted. So if they were to reduce that, then maybe that would make a little bit more sense to him. But it's just a shits and giggles game. It's supposed to make you feel like you've actually done these things, but it's the game being a good game. If it were a bad game, then it would just be like, oh, well, sorry, you jumped 0.0001 seconds too quick, gotta punish you. Now, I'm not saying that the platforming is great by any means, but it's just, does he want realism or does he want a fun game?
No mechanical system to be understood and mastered here. The only hurdle to overcome, which can be surprisingly difficult at times, is figuring out what exactly the developers want you to do, because the signposting in their cluttered, messy levels is pretty terrible. Platforming is basically a glorified QuickTime event.
Oh my god. Did Mother's Basement ever play a Mario game ever? Did he ever play a Mario game?
Only without any sort of penalty for pressing buttons too early. There are moments where Drake seems like he'll fall, but they're scripted and they pose no real threat.
That's because they are scripted. Are you kidding me? Okay. I guess I've seen this video so many times that I just forget. I forget the things that are said in it because short-term memory loss, I guess, but does he actually play games?
You can also set your watch by how predictable they are. The only time you'll die while doing this is if the scripting fails, which happens.
No, okay, this does happen, but in Uncharted 3, I died at a part where it's like at the very beginning of the game, where you're climbing up one of the water drains, and then it breaks, and you're supposed to jump, and it happens so weird that you just figure that it's gonna take over, but it doesn't, and so then that's the only part I really died at legitimately because I just didn't know that was a thing. But all this other stuff is just down to being an old game. Like this part that he's going to show you.
Happens a lot more frequently than it should. It's just pretending to be what people who don't play platformers think platformers are.
But what is a I'm gonna take a book out of the thing here, the library that Jeans has wrote for me, and it's what is wheel platforming? Because if we go by the definition of platforming, it's essentially just that you go from a platform to another platform. So in this case, you kind of do that too. Like you go from like I don't know, scaling a building, or in the case from this previous segment, you go from inside of a train car. I thought the first part of the Uncharted 2 was really good, but maybe he didn't.
The same applies to every other game mechanic, all 2 of them. Uncharted provides 2 different ways of interacting with enemies, stealth and shooting, and also straight up QuickTime events if you run up and try to punch them, but
okay, look at this bad gameplay and you tell me if any attempt at anything that he just said applies.
nobody does that unless the game forces them to because it sucks. They did a passable Arkham knockoff thing in 3, but they made it even worse in 4 with a system that boils down to mash square and wait for your AI companion to come trigger an execution.
Okay, so we saw him struggle with shooting a enemy that was like 5 feet in front of him. He was obviously not social distancing, and so he therefore needed to die. But the whole point is that he couldn't fight the bot with the easiest shit gameplay, where you literally just mash the square button. And then he can't shoot him because he's bad at shooting, and so therefore the game is bad. Maybe I'm missing the point. Maybe I'm just taking him out of context.
It's real bad. But the stealth is worse. The first 3 Uncharted games had pretty much the worst stealth system ever. In fact, even calling it a system is too generous. Enemies in these games had basically 2 levels of awareness, totally oblivious and locked onto your exact position from space, and they would switch from the former to the latter as soon as you interacted with them in pretty much any way. The stealth is a big fat lie, basically, an artificial way of building tension before shootouts. The lie gets more convincing in 4, which introduces an ability to mark enemy locations in your HUD, as well as awareness markers that create a buffer between obliviousness and battlefield omniscience. And to the uninitiated, this might seem like what a stealth game is, but it's missing all the tools that make good stealth games playable.
What are good stealth games? What are wheel stealth games? So if you're not playing the game, like obviously, because he's going to bring up the point of, well, the developers want me to do X thing. Why isn't he not taking advantage of the game's mechanics? That's what they want you to do. And I know he's not playing this on the hardest difficulty, so, you know, that kind of flies out of there. But why in the world is he getting mad at a game for introducing mechanics that you can master? Like, you may not be able to do it on the first try, obviously, but you can at least try to learn them. That's why they introduced this thing with, like, the awareness system. Are you kidding me?
You have no real way of distracting guards or moving bodies or, well, doing anything besides waiting for them to turn around, basically.
That's the point, Jeff.
Or throw grenades, because those are the only weapon that doesn't instantly give away your position.
Okay, so maybe I'm struggling to get his point here. So he is trying to go stealthy, and obviously in the game Uncharted, when you throw grenades, they don't know where it came from. It could just pop out of the fucking air for all they know. But when you pop up to shoot something, yeah, they're gonna know where you are. Is this dude not, like, even real life? Does he not real life?
Somehow. If you don't have grenades, you do a lot of tedious, shitty waiting. Or more likely you get bored and start shooting, because fuck that. Unless the designers decide that they want you to get through a section with stealth, in which case all of the enemy patrols will be piss easy to sneak past, and their line of sight will suddenly shrink to just short of the end of their nose. And conversely, if the developers don't want you stealthing through a section, the AI will spot you through walls in order to stop it.
No, that's not what happens. That's not what happens at all, actually. I know that if you play on the higher difficulties of Uncharted, then yeah, they notice a little bit more of what you're doing, because it's supposed to be more realistic. You're supposed to take more gun damage. So is he actually mad because the game is, like, It doesn't matter. He said that this isn't a game anyways. Why is he complaining?
There are even segments in Uncharted 2 where if you manage to ghost your way past groups of enemies, the game will auto-kill you when you try to leave the area because you didn't play the way the designer intended.
Well, it's just like any other first-person shooter game, or any other game for that matter. If you go out of bounds, it'll tell you to return, or it'll just kill you. This isn't something exclusive to Uncharted, Mother's Basement.
It's kind of like playing D&D with a really shitty DM.
Okay, did he record this just so that way he can make this reference?
Uncharted wants you to shoot pretty much everything, but the shooting too is a lie. Nominally, it works like most other third-person shooters. You point a cursor on the screen and press a button, and then if the hit scan scans a hit, you kill a dude.
How else do games work, Jeff? How do games work then? If you shoot something, are you supposed to just blindly be able to flail and then hope that the game registers a kill, or do you want to actually play the game? There's a DSP quote for that. Nothing is plugged in.
And if too many dudes are scanning hits at you, you hide behind a wall until they stop. Also, every 30 seconds, without fail, one of them will throw a grenade and you'll have to move to a new wall.
By the way, that went over, so it potentially it poses no threat to him. What is talking about?
And moving to a new wall is basically the extent of the lateral thinking that you have to do in these sections. People compare Uncharted to Gears of War and Tomb Raider, but the closest point of comparison I can think of is...
No. Okay, wait a minute. No. Jeff, they don't compare that. They don't say, oh, well, Uncharted is like Tomb Raider. No, they say Tomb Raider is like Uncharted. At least they do now. Back then, sure, you could make that comparison if this were like in the 90s, but you can't do that now. And also, this is a little bit kind of like a Gears of War, if you wanted to really do it that way. I don't know.
Either Hogan's Alley or Simon. Positioning isn't really important at all over the bulk of the series. Every unscripted combat scenario in Uncharted 1 and 2 is solved by memorizing which enemies try to force you out of cover when, and shooting them first.
So it's like every other game then. Like, maybe it's just me, but if you play a game so much, like Cuphead for example, if you know that the enemy is going to telegraph its moves and you know how to see it, or shit, you can even go to Dark Souls if you want to go that route. You can tell what an enemy is going to do based on their animations. In some games like Doom Eternal, you can actually tell what enemies are going to be where because the game is set up that way. So why is he trying to make this a point that this only happens in Uncharted and it's bad for doing it?
3 and 4 mix things up by actually integrating Drake's platforming abilities into the encounters and turning them into arenas, but it's still almost always optimal to hide behind a box with your back to the wall and pick off dudes like you did in every previous game.
Because that's the gameplay.
Both because that's all the designers really know how to design, and because when you try platforming, you risk getting murdered by a bug.
Wait a minute. Okay, hang on. What? let me go back. Just right here. Where I think it should be like right here in this thing.
Designers really know how to design, and because when you try platforming...
So you see this part where he jumps to the thing? What was he really expecting to happen here?
You risk getting murdered by a bug. The pirate chapter of Uncharted 3 is the only place in the entire series where constantly staying on the move, swimming in the water, and climbing up ships around the environment is absolutely necessary to get past. It's the only point where the combat in these games approaches being an actual game mechanic that you have to understand to progress.
But you can stealth your way through this part too. So we're just finding things to be mad about because you're not good at the game. And you can see, like, that's pretty much the case. Where he's trying to aim at enemies, he's not hitting them, and then when he doesn't hit them, oh, this is broken game mechanics, dude. He's like DSP.
Not coincidentally, it's also the part that drew the most complaints from series fans.
It wasn't. Just short guess, it wasn't.
Because they don't want to think about combat strategically. They want to feel like action movie badasses.
Because you are an action movie badass, what do you not get? Nathan Drake is meant to be an action hero. That's why the game is meant to be like a movie. So if he's not doing, over-the-top things, then what's the point? Like, do you not want to...
And that's Uncharted's biggest selling point. the scripted set pieces. From Uncharted 2 onwards, every Uncharted game is built around a sequence of heavily scripted combat segments set in precarious environments that are being subjected to real physics.
Okay, I'm gonna do you one better. Okay, so have you guys? I know you're all gamers, so you don't have to answer this question. I know what the answer is already. Do you guys remember any Call of Duty game? Like any one of them at all? I just want to know, so that way I can show you guys something very interesting. So in Call of Duty, you can play Call of Duty World War II. This one I know was not a fan favorite, but you can kind of just get what the point I'm getting at is here. So he talks about these huge set pieces and them being a thing that, you know, takes in the physics, whatever. But you see my point. These games have huge set pieces in them, and I don't know what his point about them being in the game really takes away from it. Also, Mad Beast Yeti for the $2 Canadian dollar reduce. How much Call of Duty pay for the plugin? They would have to pay me. They would have to let me play Call of Duty, like the newest one that they're gonna come out with, like right now. That's the only way that I'll take Call of Duty Activision money for my social credit. That's just the way that it works.
In the second game, these areas are a collapsing building and a train, and in the third, they're a sinking cruise ship and a crashing plane. In the new one, they're built around semi-dynamic vehicle chases, which aren't great, but, well, really, they aren't great. The vehicles steer like something out of Halo until they're put on rails, which is...
I don't know how he complains about the vehicle system in this game. It actually is... It's not hard.
Is the only time anything exciting happens with them. There are also big scripted punch-em-up sections in every game, but like everything else involving melee combat, they're universally terrible.
No one collectively says, man, I really hate that one punching segment in Uncharted 4. It just felt like I was just getting my ass beat. Well, because it's scripted and she actually can fight.
I will admit the shooting set pieces are very impressive from a technical perspective. I mean, everything in these games is, often unnecessarily so. The dynamic fire physics in 3 are totally pointless in such a linear scripted game, but they sure make a neat bullet point for the box, and they look fucking fantastic.
So you don't fall and just... whatever.
And I guess they did kind of enhance The Last of Us, so I'll give that a pass.
Okay, so don't ever make the comparison between the two games. That's why people at Naughty Dog decided to make the gameplay different from Uncharted to The Last of Us, because they didn't want it to be the same kind of action-adventure game. They wanted Uncharted to be its own separate IP and The Last of Us to be its own separate IP as well. So if you're playing The Last of Us, you're not going to be able to play it the same way that you play Uncharted. That's just ridiculous. You're not supposed to be able to do... well, I mean, you can, but you're not supposed to be able to. So when the good Naughty Dog made The Last of Us, they said, the gameplay is good, but let's make it more grounded, because you're in a zombie apocalypse and you're not going to be doing huge set pieces. There's not really huge set pieces in The Last of Us. You're just walking across the country. What is this comparison about how they've done something better?
Naughty Dog put in a lot of work to make it feel like real physics are acting on Drake during these segments, while also giving the player a solid level of control over his actions. If you boil it down, these bits are so heavily scripted that they're basically Dragon's Lair, but they don't feel like it.
Wait, so did you see this gameplay? So, like, why stand in the center of it? Why stand in the very, very front lines, just shooting your gun aimlessly, and then complain that the game is bad because the physics in the world around you?
Uncharted sells you the illusion of control like Telltale games sell you the illusion of choice. You're basically doing QuickTime events with very generous timing, but because they use the same control scheme as the shooting and jumping, it seems like you have more control than you actually do. And that's fun. Unfortunately, these moments kind of ruin the rest of the gameplay. Because Naughty Dog wants you to have a very specific experience in these parts, things like consistent weapon damage and movement controls kind of fly totally out the window. Normally on hard mode, you have to hit a guy in the chest with half an AK-47 clip in order to put him down, but during set pieces, that same enemy will fall to 1 or 2 bullets.
Yeah, because that's... oh, this is actually hurting my brain. Because, Jeff, realism. That's the whole thing, is the realism. Like, you're not supposed to empty 50 bullets into people in one scene and then, oh, well, now we have to fight these same enemies with the pistol, so now we need to empty 50 more bullets when this gun can only hold 12. That's fucking stupid.
And conversely, Drake can soak up quite a lot more damage. It's like you're playing a totally different game. Mechanics constantly change to fit the designer's vision.
Does he know about plot armor? I mean, he's a video games journalist of some kind. He should know about plot armor, right?
It feels cool in the moment, but in the long term, it destroys any sense of agency. To extend that shitty DM analogy, imagine your DM decides that for one part of the dungeon, any roll above 10 is a crit because he wants you to feel cool. Some cool shit will probably go down, but after that's over, the rules of the game lose all meaning for the rest of the campaign.
That's an awful analogy. What are you talking about? Why are you bringing D&D into this? Also, that would make for a shitty DM. Anybody that lets their DM do that is just, sorry for my French, but that's fucking retarded. Why would you let anyone do that to you in a D&D game?
And depending on what kind of campaign you want to play, that's fine. You might love that, and if you do, I highly recommend Fiasco. But if you're like me, a part of why you play games is to understand how their systems work and master them. There's nothing worse than feeling like you can't trust a game's rule set unless...
So, does he know that people speedrun that game?
That's the point, like in Paranoia. Uncharted pretends to be something that I enjoy, a shooter, and something that I love, a stealth game. But it is only either of those things fleetingly, and when it stops or fails at being those things, it's infuriating. The only game Uncharted is good at pretending to be is Crash Bandicoot. Even supposed non-games like Dear Esther and Gone Home at least have consistency in how they allow you to interact with them.
But you just called them games, so why are we calling this It's Not a Real Video Game? Or is that the clickbait that we use? Are we just going to use the entire ruse of, oh, well, this is what I truly think. This is actually how Uncharted is. Don't you guys agree? It's not a real game, but it's like actually a game? Semantics.
Their rules are simple, but at least they have rules. Even David Cage doesn't lie about his QuickTime events being QuickTime events, even if he does lie about how much they affect the game.
Oh, don't talk about David Cage.
Uncharted is clearly an experience that a lot of people, Digibro and Endless Jest for example,
Oh boy, we're bringing people into this. Oh my god.
enjoy, and I don't begrudge them for that. But as much as it's not really a movie, it's not really a game either.
Again, the best writing I've ever heard is how I love X, but I also hate X. So he loves Uncharted for what it is, like as a movie, but he hates it because it's a game? And did I get that right? Or, I mean, you guys can tell me if I'm just losing my mind here, but it feels an awful like he doesn't know anything about what he's talking about because he wrote it to be very cryptic. He didn't want to say this is a real video game because there's button prompts in it, there's platforming, all these elements that make it a game, but it's not a real game.
If I had to describe it, and I do, it's more like multiple mini-games strung together in a way that's meant to disguise the fact that they're totally different from each other mechanically.
Oh my god. So that would then make it a game, asshole. What are you talking about?
And that's really cool if you want to seamlessly feel like an action star and you don't mind some janky movement. It's kind of ideal for the experience that Naughty Dog is going for. The first title in the series was the most consistent mechanically, and it's also far and away the worst. The less Naughty Dog adheres to consistent rules, the more cool shit they can let you do.
What? I'm pretty sure, it's, we're already, like, almost an hour into this.
But it's not for everyone, and if you're an angry person on the internet or
an angry person or an angry gamer. So wait, so Troy Baker, okay, let me just scale it back a bit. Troy Baker tweeted out this Washington Post removed the Washington Post review from Uncharted 4's Metacritic score, or the meta score that they had. So we can safely assume that corporation, they want you to look like an actual gamer. They want you to play product. So why would they not retweet that? Why would they not put that out there into the universe? Just as a side note,
a professional who should really know better than to launch petitions against his critics, you do well to remember that. I mean, beyond the mechanical inconsistencies, the writing is all over the place, and
No. See, look. Jeff Thew has the unfortunate ability to not have to play The Last of Us 2. If he comes out with a video about how great The Last of Us 2 is, I think that, and this is just me thinking, I think he should probably just go ahead and give me all of his Crunchyroll money, because he clearly doesn't need it. Stupid people probably don't need to be paid like a Mother's Basement, because this is such a weird take for him to say that the game isn't actually a game, and we shouldn't be angry gamers because we like Thing or because we don't like Thing. Because Uncharted is, I won't say it's the best franchise, it's a pretty good gaming franchise. But to say that, oh, well, angry people on the internet, that's not how that works either. People can be critical of things. He even said it himself that people can be critical of Thing. So because they're critical of this person not completing the game and giving it a low score, yeah, they can do that. And if people sign a petition, who cares? It's not like it gets enacted anyways.
the story that they try to tell often makes no sense with the gameplay, but I'll save those complaints for another video, man.
Okay, he's gonna make The Last of Us 2 video. I'm gonna put money on it. God damn it, he's gonna make one.
Maybe. You've listened to me complain more than enough for now, and
Oh, God, at least he's aware. Oh my god. So if you guys are wondering, this is not the only bad Mother's Basement video, but it's the only one that we can really cover right now. It's one that had a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? It had a lot of just weird takes, I guess. It's one that made no sense. So he thinks that it's not a real game because people said it was good, but it's because it's like a movie, which is the entire draw of the Uncharted series. People like to play it because it's like playing a movie. It is heavy in a story. He is very inconsistent when it comes to things that are video games, which is why he doesn't talk about them that much anymore. He'll tell you that things like what's the thing that people like a lot? Sword Art Online. He'll tell you that that's not good as a game either, and sure, I can get behind that concept, but he does it in such an awful way that it doesn't make any sense. And I'm not saying that my views are the end-all be-all either, but they definitely probably make a lot more sense than, well, it's not a real game because it's like a bunch of mini games. That's not how that works. It's a game because it is a game. It's not... That's like saying the Avengers movies are not real movies. Production went into them. Sure, they're pretty cookie cutter, I guess, but they're still games. Or movies. Sorry, he's kind of fried my brain a little bit. I do have one other thing that we can do before the end of the stream to kind of cap off the hour, and it's not a very long thing to do either. It's a video that I thought about making once or twice, and it's come up in my recommended in a few ways, more than the good way. But since we're here about Mother's Basement and his very lukewarm takes, there's this video that exists about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 Primer Anime Cheat Sheet. And as you can see, I'm a person that disliked this video, and there's a reason. And it's because Mother's Basement goes through the trouble of telling you all about JoJo chronologically because he wants you to be ready for Part 5 because, Crunchyroll has the rights to it, so you gotta like it. You have to understand the story. So this video is essentially just boiled down to don't skip JoJo parts. Just don't. Read it. Do whatever you want to do with it. Do not. Don't skip JoJo parts. You're not gonna understand a goddamn thing later on. That is my statement to that. Don't skip JoJo parts. If you actually want to watch that video, I'm sure many of you are very astute people and you want to learn more about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. You can you can go here and watch this great video. It's not a fun video, I can promise you that. I've seen it all the way through because I was figuring maybe there's something weird in it that he said. It's not. He just skips parts, essentially. He's just telling you how to skip parts. His video is supposed to be a cheat sheet, so that way you can just get to giving Crunchyroll that sweet fucking dosh. And speaking of sweet dosh, thank you, Mad Beast Jetty. I don't know where you're getting all this money from. Says so now you full time. When's the Daddy Nux crossover? To be fair, I don't know anything about Nuxtaku. I guess I probably should. I don't mind. I don't mind if Nuxtaku wants to make a video together or come on to our wonderful podcast known as the Scarlet Symphony. We'll bring more of that in later because I don't know. He seems like a cool guy. I don't know anything about him really, but he could be a nice guy. I would love to have him on. He seems very pleasant, as you can see here. I don't really watch his videos. I think right now he's doing something with the Project Melodies of the universe. Because I know that he has Project Melody pretty much on like every one of his streams or something like that. So I wouldn't mind it personally. I think that it would be fun to just engage with. I want to reach out to more content creators. I think that would be a very fun thing to do. Nux is not a r/nice guy from what I see. Yeah, I don't see that being the case with him. He's very what's the word? He's very eccentric, to say the least. So I think that it would be fun to to have him on to a video of some kind if he wants to do anything. You guys got to like DM him, add him on Twitter.com, and to say, hey, this NECRO guy, he's really cool. You should bring him onto your stream. So that would be fine. I don't mind. But that's all I really have for today. I know it's been close to an hour. I don't know what my next stream will be. I know for a fact right now I have to work on this long video that I've been hyping up for like the past 2 weeks. But trust me, there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers to this video, and I can point you in the right direction. It's about a gentleman by the name of On Takahashi. You won't be able to find him on YouTube because he doesn't exist on YouTube. He's someone that is one of the people that is responsible for making Iridori comics. You know what? Fuck it. I'll just take you through it at the last part of this. So there's a gentleman by the name of On Takahashi who is a Twitter entity. He is someone, I can't really scroll down on his page because there's a lot of things that happen on there, but I can at least show you, yeah, I can show you this because there's nothing on it. On Takahashi is a gentleman that translates doujinshi and games, and he also created Iridori Comics. So Iridori Comics is a legitimate way to purchase all of your doujinshi that works with a bunch of Japanese creators, a Japanese artist, if you will. So to not give away too much, because I know you guys are very eager for information, On Takahashi, this gentleman from New Zealand, made Iridori Comics, but at the same time has been DMCAing a lot of your favorite doujinshi websites. So things like Sad Panda, or I think you guys call it EX Hentai. I don't personally use it, but he was going through and DMCAing all of those under Iridori Comics, telling the Japanese artist how the overseas people, the bad Americans, are stealing all of your doujins, and they're not paying a single dime for it. But it's kind of weird that he would bring that up, because there is a website, and you guys know that Shinmai Mao, whatever it is. Shinmai Mao is an anime series that, trust me, you're not missing a whole lot. It's a thing, but it's an ecchi series, and you know my views on ecchi series. I'm not doxing people. That's right there on his Twitter page. But if you go to the Shinmai Mao translation site, he's one of the one of the translators for it, the people that goes into direct contact with these people. It's an illegal scanlation site, and you pay him money to translate all the things from Shinmai Mao. And recently, his name was taken off of the credits for translating all of this series. It's very peculiar. I can't go into too much detail because that'll pretty much be the entire video, but just know that he's playing both sides of the field, and he doesn't want you to know about it. But soon you guys will. So just know that it's a thing. The 4chan people have been on top of it from almost day one, and it's kind of weird. It's actually kind of concerning because I was at Anime Expo last year, and Iridori Comics wasn't there, but a much different different doujin place was there. But like I said, I'll bring that up in the video later. So I have to go through a bunch of stuff, a bunch of pictures, and a bunch of cross-referencing. So the video itself may not be terribly long, but it'll be very information-filled. And then, of course, the video after that, I think I can probably give you guys a preview of the other video that you'll probably see first. And that's from a furry gentleman who decided to say that Big Titty Game is bad. And if you want to know, me and Jeans did go over this. You really just you gotta get through it. I promise. It's not a fun experience. This furry hates big anime boobies and says characters are underage. You know what? I can show you at least the video part of it. It's just a lot of gameplay. He talks about big titties. It's gonna be one of those videos. It's not very good. I promise. It's not a good thing. This is at the end of the last video. It's just not good. We will have probably another stream, and if any of you have actually seen Hunter x Hunter, this may not be the video for you. This is Hunter x Hunter is anime's best disappointment by Bob Samurai, our favorite resident AniTuber. You know, sometimes I actually forget about him. He's a person that exists. But he goes on to describe Hunter x Hunter. But like I said, that'll be for either a different stream or that might be a video. Who really knows at this point? So that's what I'm gonna leave you guys with. I know today is a Tuesday, another glorious Tuesday in the current year, the current Lord's year 2020. So with that being said, I don't think there's anything I can really promote other than just going full time. Thank you to everyone so far, and for your here, let me scroll down here because this thing doesn't work. Did I miss anything? Okay, no, I didn't. Great, but it's not showing me all of them, unfortunately. But thank you to Mad Beast Yeti for your contribution, and Zenith Works. Thank you guys very much for your super chats. I really appreciate it, and I can't really stress that enough over a microphone or even this avatar here, but I do very much appreciate it, and every little bit does help me go full time. Unfortunately, next week I'll have to be back at work, but I'll see what I can get cooking for all of us. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in another live stream, or I'll probably see you on Twitch once I can knuckle down a schedule.